minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, our twins who were conceived through in vitro fertilization 22 years ago. After they were born, we were told that the only way we could conceive a child was through IVF. 4 years later, I missed a period, but learned I was pregnant with our very much wanted daughter at 8 weeks. And that's because millions of women have irregular menstrual cycles. And oftentimes, by the time you realize you've missed your period, you are past the 6-week limitation in the Texas law. This is common. So Dr. Skop, your testimony that suggests that most women have plenty of time within that 6-week limitation is divorced from reality, from biology and science, and you know it. Now, moving on to the extremism in the Texas law, we heard the pain and confusion and challenges that Ms. Ross and her son have gone through as a result of being forced to share custody with her attacker. I just can't even imagine. But members should be aware that 34 states require a conviction of rape to terminate the parental rights of the attacker. Forcing women to give birth from a pregnancy conceived from rape is forcing women to repeatedly be re-victimized by their rapist, and that is outrageous and unacceptable. Now, soon after the Supreme Court allowed Texas's 6-week abortion ban to take effect, anti-choice lawmakers in several states announced similar legislative abortion bans, including my own state of Florida. These grotesque Texas and Florida bills in particular pose some of the gravest threats to abortion access in US history. One of the most alarming aspects of these draconian and blatantly unconstitutional bills is that they allow private citizens from anywhere to become bounty hunters to enforce the 6-week abortion ban. This is the snitch society and big brother vigilantism of Maduro's Venezuela and Castro's Cuba that my constituents have fled. Anyone, from local anti-abortion protesters to out-of-state lobbying groups, can sue any individual helping patients access abortion. And that could include a clinic receptionist, or even someone who drives a patient to an appointment, including family members, friends, or even Uber or Lyft drivers. Ms. Murray, as a legal expert, can you tell us what this means for people accessing abortion in Texas? And what would it mean for individuals in Florida if that copycat bill was signed into law? And in your answer, can you provide a little more detail about the nefarious nature of this bounty system enforcement strategy? Do you believe the goal was really to have private citizens actually file lawsuits, or just create an intimidation culture of fear that will prevent women from receiving abortion care?
Thank you for the question. I'm delighted to answer it and to set the record straight on SB 8, Texas's flagrantly unconstitutional 6-week ban on abortion. The law was purposely crafted to avoid judicial review. Typically, when abortion bans are put into law, they are immediately enjoined because they violate the Constitution, and federal courts will stop them from going into effect while their constitutionality is being litigated. In order to avoid that, Jonathan Mitchell, who is the architect of SB 8 and also the author of the bill previously referenced that cites Lawrence versus Texas and Obergefell versus Hodges as the next precedents to be overruled after Roe. He crafted this law for the purpose of taking the state out of the enforcement mechanism and delegating enforcement to private individuals. The purpose of this is twofold. One, to dismantle any system of support that a pregnant person might rely upon in seeking abortion care. And two, to ensure that a federal court cannot come and stop this law from going into effect. That produces the procedural irregularities that the Supreme Court cited in allowing this ban to go into effect. And it is the reason why today there are millions of people of reproductive age in Texas who are without the same constitutional rights that the rest of us enjoy.
Thank you. Professor Ross, I want to turn to you. I'm concerned that anti-abortion extremists will use social media companies like Twitter and Facebook to coordinate the harassment and bounty hunting of women seeking abortion. Due to systemic racial and economic barriers, we know that Black women will likely suffer the brunt of this harm. And while some companies have stepped in to prevent this kind of egregious behavior, others have failed to act, which is a clear violation of their community guidelines. Do technology companies also have an obligation to stop abortion bounty hunting on their platform to ensure community safety?
Well, I think technology companies need to be regulated simply because they've been acting like a utility and they have our privacy information. They don't seem to have a moral center about how their platforms get used to challenge democracy, and they don't seem to care because they monetize hatred and outrage and laugh all the way to the bank while those of us are vulnerable who can be targeted. So yeah, I think that's a real discussion we need to have. But I do want to raise one point, and that is talk about how many people think that Black women are threatened by Planned Parenthood. I've never worked for Planned Parenthood. I'm not an employee, but I'm going to speak up on behalf of Black women who are constantly told that we're not smart enough to determine for our lives the decisions we need to make. And I really think these white saviors need to stop acting like racists, because if you don't want to be called a racist, stop mouthing those racist talking points against Black women, because we see you for what you're doing, not for the mealy words you're saying. You don't care about our lives, you don't care about our children, and we don't care to have you denigrating a Planned Parenthood, which does work to save our lives, because you think we don't see through your hypocrisy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Norman, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As I think Congressman Comer had mentioned at the offset, this is a sad day with the atrocities that are that are happening all over this country, from Afghanistan, where people are getting slaughtered, to the border, where you talk about women